Hello, everyone. Welcome to the On-Chain India podcast. Today we have Art, co-founder and managing director of Vana Foundation, with us, who is going to take us through his journey and Vana's incredible, Web3 journey. Uh, Welcome, Art, to the On-Chain India podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Awesome. Art, I think last few quarters have been amazing for Vana. I mean, the fundraising news, the token launch, the user onboarding, it's just been, a lot of, inspiring and incredible things on what you guys have done. Would love to, deep dive into that journey, but first would love to understand, your Web3 journey. How did you, come into this space? And it's still that did the first thought which you had on coming into this Web3 journey, is it still relevant or valid, or has it shifted a bit, considering the given circumstances?
Yeah, I think it's definitely shifted. Let me start by saying I'm not what anybody would classify as crypto native. I actually came to this journey because I was really interested in data. So I was working as a researcher at Harvard, looking at human subjects data. So basically gathering data from people. And a lot of this data goes to train AI. If you think about the data that's gone to train ChatGPT, it's a lot of our messages, our writings as human. And so then it got me into the world of data brokerage or data sales. And so I was working at one of the largest companies in the world that buy and sell people's data. And it's you'd be excused for not knowing anything about this industry because it's a very closed industry. The way that your data is bought and sold is behind closed doors. And I was fortunate enough to be privy to some of the things that were happening there. But by being there, I witnessed that there was such inefficiency and such inequity in the way that that marketplace was operated. The example is that as an individual who creates the data, you're not rewarded or provided any value in this supply chain. And then as developers, people who are interested in using this cool data to train AI, you're gated from accessing this data because you don't have the capital, because so many of these large platforms and data brokers control the market so much. So it got me thinking, and my co-founder and I came together around this idea of how can we really create an open marketplace for data in a world where AI is proliferating and data is the differentiator, which we saw as incredibly important. How do we create that new economic primitive? And the reason why I got into Web3 was because blockchain is a perfect solution for the data aggregation problem. The reason why platforms have so much power is because they can structure and aggregate people's data, but we can also do that on chain. And so my co-founder, who comes from another layer one protocol, she was one of the first engineers there. Her and I came together and thought, well, if the big platforms can do it with centralized actors, can we aggregate people's data and allow them to have the value of the data using decentralized technology? So that's Vana, that's the L1 that allows you as an individual to unite your data with tens of thousands of other strangers and be able to bring that valuable data set into a data economy so that you can compete with the major platforms and these major data brokers. So I actually came to Web3 just because I thought that the blockchain technology was perfect for solving this problem because you don't have an intermediary. And my initial thought coming into it was, hey, this is really cool. It feels like open source. Everyone is building, working with each other to try to create new worlds. I think my views have changed slightly in that I think that Web3 is currently moving separate from the rest of the world. And I want Vana to be the unifying force that allows people who are not Web3 to relate to Web3 just like I did, and allow people in Web3 to provide their technology in the real world to real use cases. So that's just like my only shift there.
Awesome. I think having that sort of experience on what you're building and what the next few years is going to be, I think it's very, very crucial. I think Art, when I interact with a lot of these early stage founders, they always have the dilemma that, hey, should I go to idea A or idea B? Because both of the idea looks like it's gonna go and make it big. And founders often make that mistake. I would not say mistake, but there's a lot of time diversion which goes off on what to focus and what to not. So Art, I know you had a background, so you're very specific, but especially for founders who are freezing down on their idea, what is the mental playbook, that you think they should have it, and how should they chase on achieving that initial PMF?
Yeah, so I should caveat this by saying I'm of the disciplined entrepreneurship school, that kind of school of thought that exists in MIT. I'm also a product guy. So a lot of what I'm saying is for very early stage founders trying to find their ideas. You need to find a way to iterate quickly without investing too much energy into an idea. One of my greatest mentors and the first product manager that taught me how to do product management and discovery, she was telling me a story about how she was thinking about a new feature or a new product, and all she did was she cut up these little, palm cards, palm cards like these, and she just drew the app on the palm cards and sticky taped it together and went around the campus and said, hey, pretend this is an app. Tell me what you think about it. Tell me what you would touch. Let me see this in action. That exercise took her a few minutes, but she was able to validate or not validate her ideas. I think a founder needs to balance being opinionated in what they want to achieve, but also being open to getting as much signal from the world as possible. And the ones that I've seen succeed the most are the ones that follow that disciplined entrepreneurship stage of like de-risking at every single stage until you get to product market fit. Like that's super important at early stage. Try to de-risk and not invest too much too early on, and test aggressively so you get as much signal from the world.
Awesome. Since you mentioned disciplined entrepreneurship, I was very fortunate to sit with Bill Ollett. I mean, the founder of the 24 Steps of Disciplined Entrepreneurship in MIT. And I mean, he was amazing. I mean, it was back in my startup days, probably like 10 years back. But I mean, the way he took over, step one, step two, step three, it all made sense, right? I mean, a lot of people perceive this entrepreneurship as a hard ball where you don't know what the outcome is going to be. But if you go into a process oriented process, disciplined manner, I think it's very easy to take steps.
And my biggest takeaway from doing disciplined entrepreneurship is you need to de-risk the bets that you're taking as a founder at every single stage. You don't want to waterfall this where you're investing all of the capital and all of your, I think the most valuable thing isn't necessarily the financial capital that you get, but your personal energy and your personal time. Don't invest months of your time to develop a product that you haven't tested. You can test ideas. There are so many tools available on the market to concept test. And don't think that it needs to be anything robust in terms of an experiment. You can get signal from just hopping on a Skype call, talking to your friends and saying, what do you think about this idea? And a lot of founders are very afraid of that. I think we as humans are a little bit afraid to get negative feedback on things that we think are really powerful, or things that we've come up with as our little genius. But I'd encourage people to resist that feeling and talk to people and say, this is my idea, what do you think of it? And note that down. I aggressively note everything down in a notebook. Like I still use a notebook, and note every single piece of information down. I try to, because it's so important to learn on this journey. Even after several years on this journey, you still have to learn.
Incredible. Art, moving on, I have a couple of questions on Vana, and then we'll probably move on. But I think the Vana's mission is like pretty clear. I mean, you want to empower users to own and control their data. And in the traditional Web2 world or something which this data has been controlled by the giants, it's like nearly impossible on how your data is being used or stuff. So how is actually Vana utilizing it? Can you give some examples on how this is coming to stage, and what do you see in next 3 or 4 years? How will this change the industry?
So there's a couple of fronts in which I kind of want to talk about the major changes that we're seeing happen. So the very first data DAO, a data DAO is basically a collective of people who want to aggregate a specific data set. So you can be like, anyone can say like, hey, I think that Spotify data is valuable. Okay, let's come together. Let's create this data collective. Let's put a token on it. And in exchange for contributing your data, you get a token. You get that data set specific token. And then when that data set is fully aggregated and commercialized, used in an AI model or whatever, all of the collective, the people who've contributed their data, will see upside to it. That's the structure of Vana. We saw this early on in the Reddit Data DAO, which is the first data DAO that launched on our testnet, where it was a Reddit community. Actually, it came from a Reddit post, and this is what I love about the system. It's community driven. So there was a Reddit thread, and somebody said, it's so unfair that Reddit is selling all of our data to Google for $250 million. I didn't participate in Reddit so that they could do this with all of my comments and help. Like, people participate in Reddit to help people, not so that they can get their data sold. And so this community started to build in Reddit. And they reached out to me and Anna, were like, I know you're developing this technology. Can we try it out? And then they spun up the first data collective. They had a proof of contribution, which was used to make sure that users could validate and verify their data. And within a week, 140,000 users participated in that data DAO. At its peak, when the token price was high, because people were like, this is exciting, people were able to earn upwards of $900 USD equivalent to contribute their data. And then subsequently, that community has gone on to create their own model. So they've used the data. Actually, this is the beauty of it. A Google machine learning engineer came in and said, hey, can I access the data? Because, they left Google and they're like, I want to create data on Reddit data, an AI model on Reddit data. And the DAO basically said, yes, but you have to join us. This is going to be our model and we can do it together. And I think that the beauty of that is, like, we're actually creating technology together now. It's not like big tech harvests our data, creates technology for us. It's we as a collective own this data, come with us, come get on this journey and build something for us. So that's one example of how the communities come together around a data set and created a model based on the data. There are several other ways in which this is kind of playing out in niche community groups. So we have one data DAO, which is really close to my heart, which is the cancer data DAO. And it's a group of cancer survivors that are pulling together their medical information because they think that if they do that, they'll be able to unlock cures for cancer. Because right now, the processes for accessing this data are so cumbersome. And these people are like, there was somebody who's working at a Harvard Research Institute that I recently spoke to. And he said it took 3 years for them to get access to a data set that could potentially provide a cure. And this DAO is like, no, we've been affected by this. We want a cure tomorrow. What can we do to control it? Let's come together with our data. Let's bring on board some data scientists, and let's bring on board some medical professionals, and let's try to see if we can create a cure for cancer with our data. So it's really thinking about how communities can leverage the power of their data together. And we're seeing pockets of these occur in different data sets. So if any of the listeners here are interested in creating a data DAO or a data collective, feel free to reach out to us. Go to docs.vana.org as well. But it's the idea of, like, if you think a data set is valuable, you should own it. Like, you create that data. Why do you not have any upside in it? That's crazy.
Amazing. Art, is this also the concept that goes in your data liquidity pools? Like, suppose if there is a common, sort of thing, and then people, as you mentioned, the cancer example, a lot of people contribute their medical, sort of data. So these are different pools which are created and then, rewarded.
Yeah, so we've chosen the term data liquidity pool because the way that data exists right now is illiquid. Why is it illiquid? Because each of us, so your data is worth something, my data is worth something, but it's actually not worth that much separately. Data liquidity occurs when you can bring the data set together and create signal from masses of data. And so a data DAO is just an entryway to a data liquidity pool. Data liquidity pools can be structured as DAOs or any other structures. We actually have a token standard that defines these data-backed tokens. It's called a VRC20 token standard. But the idea is that we need to start creating these pools of data. They are a valuable asset class, especially in an AI-driven world where the public data is gone. Data scraping is very cheap and it doesn't create additional signal for AI models. What you're really looking for is that private and proprietary data. So if we can pool these data sets, we can create real liquidity, not just in the data and computational sense, but also in a financial sense. The most performative models in AI are going to rely on data that's behind these walled gardens. And if we can take this data out, we can empower those communities that provide the data as well as the AI models that are built off it.
And just to add on this, so how is the privacy of this data being preserved, and like how also, if you can share some examples, how does the community or the people who contribute earn that data? Like probably in last quarter, how was that process? And do you see that particular set of liquidity pools thriving and more people contributing because of the rewards?
Yeah, so let me talk about the data privacy piece, because this is always asked. So we've architected the protocol. You have to architect it such that an individual is always in control of their data. So the Vana protocol is such that if you take, say for instance, you wanted to contribute your Spotify data, you would take that data from Spotify, you would contribute it into the protocol, but what you're actually doing is you're designating a secure enclave that is your own, where your data is encrypted with your private keys. Then that data is also going into the data DAO's secure enclave, still encrypted with your private keys. And only through governance in that data DAO with the data token can that data ever be accessed. So at every stage of this process, your data is encrypted with only your private keys. And should you wish to opt out of anything in this process, all you would need to do is delete your enclave, because what's written on chain is a pointer and a verification stamp on your data that it exists here and it's in your enclave. In order for it to be used in the protocol, it needs to be accessed through our trusted execution environment. So we operate on a standard of not allowing data to actually freely flow outside of the protocol. It can, if users wish to take their data outside, that's totally within the user's purview. But at the collective level, if you wanted to train a model on the data, for example, you wouldn't export the data. You would actually ask for, you would call the protocol to be able to run an operation within the trusted execution environment in order to extract the model weights to create your model. So the data never leaves. That is by design. We want the data to always be with the user, but also we want to maintain the commercial value of the data. One of the biggest issues in data marketplaces is your data is easily copyable. So if you were to sell your data, if the data DAO was to sell their data, they lose the capital asset. So what we're saying is, no, you should be able to rent your data out. People will be able to access that data to run operations, insights, create models, but they never take the foundational asset, the capital asset, which is your data, so it can be used time and time again and commercialized. How we've seen this play out in the last quarter, we've had 2 major data sales in the last quarter, as well as the Reddit data sale, which was actually the quarter beforehand. But one of the data DAOs, DLP Labs, that commercializes car vehicle telemetry data, so people's movements in their cars, recently entered into a data sale. I think it's in upwards of $1 million. It's just a small initial data sale for the commercialization of that data. And then we have another data DAO that is commercializing Telegram message data and has entered into a data sale for that. And the users are able to benefit from these data sales by holding the token. The mechanisms for how the users get remunerated are determined by the data DAOs themselves. However, they do earn upside when these data sales happen, either in price fluctuations or in direct revenue.
Amazing. I mean, there's so many possibilities of all the day-to-day datas that are being used. Or say, for example, I mean, take crypto or non-crypto examples as well. I think someone yesterday I was speaking to, they were very interested in all the deep in related data in terms of weather, temperature, humidity, all those kind of things. And what if anyone has to access it, right? I mean, everyone cannot be a hardware company. So for example, if I want to access some data in Eastern Europe where I don't have anything, it's so much easier to just take a download of that particular thing by paying around it. And there are also a lot of Web2 or on ground use cases, say like agriculture, or for that matter of mark, like inflation index or something, which has been going on traditionally, and people can access it within it. So it's amazing. So Art, how many data sets are like is it created, and how do you foresee in probably this year how many of them would be there?
Yeah, so we have 22 active data DAOs that have been deployed in the ecosystem to date. In the last quarter, they've aggregated about 12 million data points, more than 12 million data points across things like Twitter, Telegram, medical data, DNA data, like a whole the health tracking data, sleep data. There's a whole range of different data DAOs on there. I think in terms of how we see this grow, like we have there is a cohort program that we use to help people to understand the value of data and how to create these data liquidity pools through these data DAOs. So we have around 150 applicants for our next cohort, and we're looking at continuing to expand and grow in that way. Several folks are already, Vana's permissionless, so they can deploy at any point in time. So it's self-serve. You can go on to docs.vana.org and identify how to do it, create your own proof of contribution, and then deploy straight away. Or you can coordinate with the foundation, and the foundation can provide additional support. So how do I see this grow? I mean, in an ideal world, like there are so many different permutations of data. Like, one data DAO could be just, or one DLP could just be Twitter data. Another DLP could be Twitter data with trading data. Another DLP could be Twitter data with trading data with heart rate monitor. Like there are so many different permutations of how this data could exist. I would love to see hundreds, if not thousands, of different data DAOs living on Vana and being able to then power different AI applications. Our target for this year is to continue to expand the network beyond what we have, and to make sure that we have a nice broad coverage of data sets. We're already seeing really strong demand in social media data. So upcoming, I think the Unwrapped data, which is the Spotify data, has just recently launched. The TikTok and the Instagram data are coming up soon, as well as Facebook, because there's increasing demand for that data off that platform. As you were speaking, Pratik, I was thinking about there's another data set, which is one of my pet ones, which is the Amazon Prime data set. And it's like how people spend according to geography. And it's really hard to get that data because I don't know if people know this, but your credit card statements, they do have some of this data, but they don't have it at the item level. They don't have it at the size, color, etc. level. They might have it at the bill level or at the general description of the thing. And so, we're looking at an economic downturn right now. People are saying, household spending is going up and down. You know how they actually get that data? They go door to door to households or phone them up and be like, how much are you spending? Imagine if we had immediate insight on that, because we knew, I'm sure Amazon knows whether or not spending is going up and down, but we should know that. That's a social fact. Like we should have access to that. And so those are the kinds of data sets that I want to see on Vana. And if any, and I've been throwing so many ideas for different data sets. So if anybody listening has ideas for data sets, keep throwing them out there, post about them in Twitter and tag me. I'd love to hear about them, because every person that I meet has new ideas for new data sets on Vana.
Amazing. I think one podcast is not sufficient, Art, just to deep dive on this use cases. Probably we need to do another one. Yeah. But in interest of time, I mean, I want to keep on talking more, but in interest of time, I think let's move. I think let's come to the founders, where the focus is what we are doing.
Of course.
I think Art, I think you guys have did like a perfect playbook, and it's inspiration for a lot of founders that I speak. That hey, there's this AI company Vana, which did raised good amount of capital, raised Series A, went for a token launch, and I think all the check marks have been done. A couple of questions in this, like how do you structure this entire thing, because especially there's a lot of unclarity in these markets, and crypto markets are very, very price sensitive. Like, I mean, last few weeks, I'm not hearing any people, going, markets are down, I don't want to start fundraise now or something like that. And there's a different side to it where people feel this is an opportunistic thing. But especially for early stage founders with lack of experience, what would you, give them playbook about, how to go about fundraising? And B part to that question is, in actual fundraising one, I think, a lot of people say, Art case, you need some references, or just don't reach out cold to these sort of VCs. And specifically for developers or founders who don't have access to a lot of these companies, or the investors, how do you feel they should plan on their fundraise as well?
Yeah, I think it's a really hard problem. There's one thing that I should say. It's that, but before I say anything, the playbook changes so quickly when you're launching a token. So what I'm going to do to be practical for the audience is focus in on pre-token launch stuff, because I think there's stuff that you can do that's pre-token launch that's pretty standardized, and there are some principles you can take from there. But then when it comes to the token launch piece, you need to really listen to the market and to really get into that intel from people that you trust. So in terms of like early stage founders that are looking to raise capital or looking to, spin up an idea, I think it's very, I meet a lot of founders that are really eager to get their first check, get their first money in, right? And I think that's great. However, I think that you should temper that with understanding this first money, how can it be used to catalyze other connections for my later rounds? There are so many founders that I know who take in checks too early on from folks that are not helpful for later rounds. And I think for us, we had the benefit of having some really great people back us even from the pre-seed stage, who were helpful to connect us to the next round. And then our seed investors, Polychain, connected us to our next round, which was Paradigm. And then Paradigm helped us immensely with our next round, which was Coinbase Ventures. And so really thinking intentionally, even from day dot, about who you're accepting money from and how that leads to a successful growth strategy for you as a business is critical. I will not take credit for that. My co-founder was amazing in the way that she thought about that kind of stuff. I should say that I've just been observing this from the sidelines, but I see so many companies have really awkward conversations in later rounds because of people who they've taken money from in earlier rounds. So just be very mindful of that, I think, as an early stage founder. The second thing is connections. Yes, they do matter. But the best way to make them is through genuine connections. Like, you can almost sniff from a mile away when somebody's leveraging you for your network. It's very clear. But find people whom you have common interests with. Get involved in communities like blockchain communities, like topic area communities if you're interested in data, because these communities will have connections and networks, even college communities or alumni communities. Anna and I actually started our very first venture out of the Harvard, funded by the Harvard Bosva Romani Center and MIT Martin Trust Center. So we were like incubated by the universities. Your universities are incredible resources for this because they have deep networks that you can tap into that can help. So I think very few founders come in cold and without some sort of network. Build those networks organically. Don't look out for them and try to build strategically. Don't be like, cold emailing someone from A16Z. Like, that's probably not going to get you that connection. But being really passionate about what you do and meeting somebody at a conference or within like a community that just gets what you do and loves what you do could be a nice pathway towards meeting people who are the leaders of their field. So that's the second thing. Network organically. Don't be super strategic about that. And then the third thing I would say is 9 times out of 10, it's not you. And what I mean by that, there's so many factors that go into whether or not you're a successful company, or whether or not you raise a successful round. A lot of founders feel so demoralized when they can't control the outcome, but you're not in control of the outcome. And as soon as you accept that, and as soon as you're like, well, I'll take the opportunities where they're presented to me, and I'll be okay with the outcome if those opportunities don't present themselves. That's where you want to be. You want to be comfortable with that, because then that makes you a lifelong entrepreneur, not just this is my way to get rich right now entrepreneur. You've really got to be open to the fact that you don't control timing, you don't control market, you don't control whether people like you, you don't control whether your technology is going to be eclipsed by some random technology that's been built in stealth in the last 6 months. You don't control that. So give it your best shot and be comfortable with the outcome, because then you'll do it again and again and again, and you'll feel the love for being an entrepreneur, which is super important in what we do.
I think this is like next level art. I think a lot of people don't talk about this stuff. It's all about the glamorous side of it. But what you said is a lifelong devotee of an entrepreneur. I think that is what most of the founders need to do. I think you rightly said outcomes is, something which is way beyond our controls, but, there's a definitive path where people can go. And I think the process can be enjoyed. I think it's just a fascinating industry. Every day is a new, something crazy, stuff happens.
And you'd know this as well, Pratik, like not everyone is built to be an entrepreneur. Like it's okay if this isn't something that you like to do, but there are people who thrive on that. And I love the idea of just like constantly making. I love making, and we, even without reward, the process of creation is something that I absolutely love to do. And so I think that, it was really, I'll tell you what, in the early days, getting a rejection hurt really badly, but you develop a thick skin, and then you go back to this whole, like, do I love what I do? Yeah, I do. So it doesn't matter what they say about me. I'm going to do my own thing.
Amazing. I think we have exceeded, time art, but one last final question, and we'll stick it around, Vana. So say a developer or a user has to contribute in a meaningful way where, they see, some, reward output or some, stuff that goes in. What is the best way, for both developers and users to contribute to Vana at this stage?
So if you're not a technical person, but you have a business acumen, we're developing tools for people to be able to launch these data collectives without knowing how to code. And that could be a really nice pathway for people who are entrepreneurial, but not business, but not technically minded. Look out for that in the next quarter. Sign up to our Builder Discord. I think it's build.vana.org. We have all information there so that you can stay up to date. For those who are builders and are technical, they know Solidity, they can code in Python, they understand AI, they understand data, feel free to try your hand at spinning up a data DAO. Even better if these two groups want to meet up, because that's a really cool combination. Super technical, super business-minded, you kind of do need a little bit of both. So join our Discord, make friends, meet up, create these data collectives. Super important. Very soon, we'll have our data access and data portability layers. So if folks want to access some of the data to create AI applications, so an example here is there's a large fashion brand that wants to be able to allow you to predict your clothing preferences from your Spotify data, and they're going to create a model out of this. And so you can just connect using your wallet, your Spotify data, and maybe get some clothing recommendations out of it. If people want to build apps like that on top of data, also join our Discord. Our ecosystem team will sort you out and find places for you to go. For folks that are not entrepreneurially minded at all, and you're like, hey, I just want to check it out, go into stake.vana.org. There you'll see a list of all of our data DAOs that you can contribute to. Just start contributing your data, earning some of their data tokens. We're soon going to have a data wallet, which will have all of these in the one spot. But for now, just explore the data DAOs, contribute your data, see what you think about it. And I'd love to get feedback, again, in Discord, or you can ping me directly on Twitter. Although, apologies if I don't respond immediately. I've got a very big backlog of messages. But yeah, I think there's ways for everyone to get involved. And as I said, like, we're interested in like us being this kind of interface between Web 2 and Web 3, bringing new people on. If you're not a Web 3 builder, please don't hesitate to join our Discord. Please come in. We welcome you. We want to help you become Web 3 builders. So if you're just a data nerd like me, come along. We'd love to have you on this journey.
Amazing. Thanks, Hart. I think it was great to have you on board and deep dive into multiple aspects. I'm pretty sure each of these points were so fluid that we need like a separate podcast for each of these things. We will probably do it probably next quarter or so. But
happy to answer any questions. Happy to do this for you guys. Thank you so much, Pratik, for having me. Best of luck, everyone. Take care.